Soapbox. So let's hop across the pond. Something fascinating is going on in Britain today, and it's pretty historic. So, Britain took the referendum vote to leave the EU. It's called Brexit. And in addition to taking that vote, they realized that that vote or that referendum did not have legal standing. So they needed to actually have a vote in Parliament to make it official. So they're in the process of arguing and making that vote. And I think they just did. So MPs vote to give May power to start Brexit by triggering Article 50 by a majority of 384 votes. So, look, this isn't the end-all, be-all. There's still additional, discussions that they need to have on this, but it's a start. So they're getting the ball rolling. So this is from The Guardian. MPs have taken a historic step towards taking Britain out of the European Union by providing the bill allowing the Prime Minister to trigger Article 50 by a majority of 384 votes. The bill still has to get through another 3 days of debate in the Commons, and then it will go to the Lords. But with MPs backing it by such a large margin, it now seems certain to clear all its parliamentary stages by the beginning of March. This means Theresa May will be able to trigger Article 50 as she plans before the end of the month, starting a 2-year process that should lead to the UK being out of the EU by 2019. Now, the amazing part today is that Jeremy Corbyn had a defection of 20% of his team to vote for Remain. Now, the Labour line was essentially to respect the will of the referendum. And typically within British politics or parliamentary systems, those guys fall in line. So for America, our system is based off of, cooperation. The American system of government literally requires cooperation. That's why we don't get shit done, because there is no such thing right now. But under parliamentary systems, for the most part, those guys are one group. When you vote for, the person who you want, if you get enough seats, you take over. So the systems are different. I'm explaining that because for Americans, they hear 20% voted for something else. It's like, okay, so what? Democrats vote against the interests of Democrats all the time. Republicans sometimes do the same thing. But this is a parliamentary system. That's rare. So to have 20% of the people decide they want it to stay is somewhat of a big deal. Now, of course, though, there was going to be a backlash. Well, not necessarily a backlash, but it's politics. So the one person is going to still hit the other person, regardless of what they did. So in this case, 47 Labour MPs voting against Article 50 bill shows Labour can't speak for themselves, let alone speak for the country. They're hopelessly divided and can't even agree whether they should back the bill to implement the decision taken by the public to leave the EU. What we do know is that they aren't interested in controlling our laws or immigration, and they are completely out of touch with ordinary working people. This was a conservative that said that. That's amazing. That's funny. But it's politics, man. Look, in politics, they hit the person regardless of what takes place. Those people could have voted for it, and this guy still would have found something to complain about. So I take all of this with a grain of salt. So Liberal Democrat Tim Farron puts out a statement. He said, "The Tories and Labour have failed future generations today by supporting a hard Brexit. Labour's leadership tonight have waved the white flag. They are not opposition, they are cheerleaders. The Liberal Democrats will continue to fight to give British people the final say on the deal." Is it that the term referendum just doesn't make sense? Referendum is a final say. The public says, we want to leave the EU. Now, whether or not the public is right in that assessment has nothing to do with this. For the most part, the public made the choice. You're just implementing that choice. Whether they have failed future generations or not, the public chose to leave. Well, how is it that they are failing them? Now look, you can make a case that says they failed them with economic policy. You can make a case that says this capitalistic model has failed them. You can even make a case that says this conservative government failed them. But the Brexit was what the people chose. I mean, the public chose it. They felt, to some degree, the same thing that Americans feel. We have a spike in immigrants. We don't have control of our borders. They're taking our jobs. And what else? Some of the other crazy stuff that people come up with. But you can't blame Labor or the Tories for this. They're just following through what the public decided they wanted. It's not that, I don't even think Theresa May necessarily wanted to do it. It's just her job at this point. So, again, they hit you for whatever takes place. Yeah, they hit you for whatever takes place. So Corbyn had something to say. So he says, Labour MPs voted more than 3-1 in favor of triggering Article 50. Now, the battle of the week ahead is to shape the Brexit negotiation, to put jobs, living standards, and accountability center stage. Labour's amendments are the real agenda. The challenge is for MPs of all parties to ensure the best deal for Britain. And that doesn't mean giving Theresa May a free hand to turn Britain into a bargain basement tax haven. I do like what he's saying to some degree. He's like, look, regardless of what these people are saying, look at what we're opposing. This is what we want to do. Don't care about rhetoric. This is what we're trying to do. These are the amendments that we're putting forward. This is the vision that we have of Britain. Yeah, I like that. Now, on one part though, it's funny. He's like, Labour voted more than 3-1 in favor of triggering Article 50. That's a really stilted way to write that, or to say that. Because typically you just say, Labour voted to do so-and-so. But you had to delineate the number, 3-1 in favor. And look, I get it. You're trying to make it seem like, oh wow, there was a huge number of people who did it. But you know that the honest answer is, these guys defected from a situation that you wanted them to vote, or the particular way you wanted them to vote. Just because you're saying 3-1, it does not change the fact that 20% of your team said, I want to stay. I want to stay. I don't want to go anywhere. But get those guys to fall in line, man. And you know what's wild? Just they're calling it a quote-unquote rebellion. Because they didn't want to leave the EU. So 47 Labour MPs defied the whip and voted against Article 50 on the second reading. 3 members of the shadow cabinet resigned so that they could vote against the bill. 4 front benchers resigned so they could vote against the bill. Another 10 shadow ministers voted against the bill, but have yet not resigned. 3 whips also voted against the bill, but have not resigned. A total of 17 Labour front benchers, shadow ministers and whips, either resigned over the vote or defied the whip. The whip meaning the person whose job it is to get those people to vote a particular way, get them to fall in line. So essentially there's been a great calamity at Labour today. That's a tough one, man. At the end of the day, people don't necessarily know what they voted for. And this guy is going to hit Theresa May and Labour for doing a hard Brexit. But again, even in his statement, he has to know. This is theater. I get sick of, I get annoyed by the hypocrisy sometimes, or the fact that they're curbing things a particular way. That may kind of be true, but it's there to give a false impression to the person who's perceiving that information if they don't necessarily know the details of the story. So, for instance, he's saying they failed our future generations by choosing a hard Brexit. She didn't choose a hard Brexit, per se. I mean, it's very possible that she did not have choice in the matter. The vote was to get out of the EU. In order to get out of the European Union, you're going to have to essentially extinguish the ties that you have with trade and everything else. Now, in order to trade with the EU after you leave, you're still going to have to follow the regulations of the EU, meaning you're still going to have to meet those trading standards. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now, can you negotiate some different kind of deal where you can maintain immigration and everything else? Well, at the point where you're out the EU, maybe. But who says they're going to give you a good deal on that? You're a singular country now, and you're working to get into the market for the EU market and the United States market. And you guys are going to take a hit to some degree if you can't make up that trade. I mean, for the most part, I think it's like 20% of the British economy is through Europe. When that's severed, you're going to have to make that money up somewhere. So I really hope you guys get a decent deal where you can make this work. But I guess my feeling is saying that they chose a hard Brexit is not all that true. If they were mandated to take the country out of the EU, if they were mandated to control their borders, then you still have to follow the regulations of the EU to some degree. So there was, put it this way, there would have been no situation where Britain could have stayed in the EU and retained control of its borders. Germany was not going to allow that. So this is history, history in the making. I love Britain. I have this, I must have had like a past life in Britain. This is one of my favorite countries. I love the history of it. I've been there. I love the look of it. I love the people. So a little standoffish, but still, it's something about it for me that I really like. So I don't want any harm to come to the country. I kind of want them to be able to get through this without it being too much calamity. I'm not overly optimistic that they're going to avoid the calamity, because nobody's ever done this, from my understanding. And so this is going to be a haphazard process, a negotiation by people who may be slightly bitter on both sides of this negotiation. So I hope it goes well. But this is somewhat of a historic day, even though, and look, depending upon whether you wanted them to leave or wanted them to go, it's a historic day for either the good or the ill. So, in my opinion, I understand the issues of around sovereignty. Like, for a country to be able to define how it wants to pursue its goals, and for the country to not necessarily have some foreign body dictate policy, regulations. I understand their point, and to be honest, I understand it on both sides. I don't necessarily have a choice in it. My feeling is, yes, some resentment and racism was ginned up, but that's not necessarily why people left. People wanted to leave because A, they wanted to control their borders. B, they think their jobs are being shipped abroad. C, the elites in the country was not paying attention to them. So to some degree, this was a giant flipping them off. There's multiple things. I mean, neoliberalism has not done the world well. And so you found a situation where people finally got a chance. And look, under normal circumstances, they have no levers of power to fight back. I mean, at the very least in the United States, those levers of power are crushed. In Britain, maybe they have some residual level where a citizen can go and make a vote, or a citizen can change something. But for the most part, they've been out of touch. When those people went into that booth to sign their referendum for the first time in a long time, they get to throw a brick into the window of the establishment. And that's exactly what they did. So it's not so much that all these people wanted to leave. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Maybe they felt that their jobs were being shipped abroad. Who knows? I don't necessarily know what was in everybody's heart. I suspect it was a wide range of reasons why people wanted to get out of the vote. But those reasons don't matter. They voted to leave. And that liberal Democrat, who sounded like he was trying to fight to remain against the will of the people who sent him there, your job at this point is to get your country out smoothly without too much calamity. So, good luck on that, guys. Thanks.